Okay, first of all, I want to say hello and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this wonderful venue. My name is Ralf Wunder. I'm working for a company who is carrying a Greek name, but obviously not everyone here in the room probably knows what we are doing. We are doing titanium dioxide. The company is called KRONOS, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the market dynamics within the titanium dioxide industry. Me, myself, I was working now in the industry for more than 3 decades, and I can promise you not a single year has been alike the other one. So there is a certain dynamics in that industry, and also not one year has been as it was planned. And that is basically describing the world that we are dealing with. So to give you all a chance to get a little bit more to know about KRONOS, this is the company at a glance. Unfortunately, the numbers here are more reflecting 23 because 24 is not yet published and we're not supposed to share the numbers. However, we are almost a 2 billion revenue company. We are number 3 when it comes to titanium dioxide of the chloride process in the world. We have been profitable and very healthy in 22. In 23, due to the macroeconomic circumstances, we made a loss. Here we describe it as -7 million EBITDA. Operating income was even worse. 24 is better. That is all I can say now. We usually spend about 1% for R&D activities to ensure that our plants and our products are state-of-the-art and simply are produce efficient, but also enable you as our customers to make use of the product in a very efficient way, because efficiency for us is a key driver to take out cost, and that is simply very important these days. We are globally, our production sites are based in Europe and in North America, so we deal with businesses in over 100 countries. We are represented actually across the globe. We are making our products in 9 different facilities, 109 years of experience, so actually pretty similar to the Van Weye business. Total employees here, and that is probably a number which is not really in the correlation of what I said before, because that's the current number of employees that we have, 2,600, a little bit more. Reason behind is last year we bought the second half of a joint venture that we had to run for over 20 years. And these number of people are already added here, but the number of the turnover is actually not reflected in the 23 numbers. And now we come to the most important number on this chart. It's the little one in the low right corner, because I think it's the most important number here, because it expresses that we are a very focused company. So we have all the advantages and disadvantages of making and selling one product, that's titanium dioxide. We have 50 different types about in our portfolio. They are all white. We got plenty of questions why we continue to do that, but there is a need for certain applications of very specific grades and shades, and therefore we end up with 50 white titanium dioxide products. In the end, it's one product. And therefore, we are very much dedicated and focused to make it as efficient and as good in quality as possible. So the next slide actually tells you a little bit about the long-term history within the titanium dioxide industry. So basically, it tells you a little bit about the dynamics of the consolidations that took place, of the spin-offs, and just by the dynamic of the chart, you already see that there is a certain movement every time that you actually see a disruption in an arrow that stands for a consolidation or for a divestment of business over the years, and that it displays basically the recent 35, 38 years in business and the activities within the Western competitors. You can imagine that running a titanium dioxide company is a large chemical facility. It's a very complex facility, and every time you change the structure, you add a company or you divest the company, you have to change the structures as well. And that is luckily something that we as a company did never undergo. So therefore, we have that focus to be just with titanium dioxide. We have that focus to have only processes that we build in our assets. So basically that means We are the experts for our plants. We own the technology, and we have not to deal with any foreign technologies, or let's say we are not losing our focus in terms of that we have to generate synergies, that we have to clean portfolios, that we have to get rid of people, because we are already lean. And that is what I mean when I talk about focus. The Western European demand versus the Chinese supply, that gives you a little bit of an impression on the dynamics from the demand and supply situation. So here basically you see quarterly demand numbers. The dark blue bars are the demand. The light blue bars are basically the imports, in particular here from China. And that covers basically the Western industry in the red numbers, or the white numbers in the red areas. Actually, they display the corresponding market share. And what you basically see over the years is that the Chinese imports have gained a lot of market share. If you look at the market, how it was in 21, the titanium dioxide demand of the Western European countries altogether was around 1.3 million tons. That is what we considered at that time a short market, so that means a little bit short in supply. And when you look at the very recent, very long market situation in 23, we are talking about 1.1 million ton for the same number of countries. Basically, the difference between a long and a short market here is expressed by 15%. So that gives you a very narrow navigation path, basically, to remain profitable or to simply be unprofitable. And then you also see from the bars here the cyclicity of the business. At the end, you can see that in the downwards market, when the market was turning into a longer situation, Chinese imports were gaining more traction, and that actually peaked at the very beginning of last year. So we saw a record high market share of over 30%, basically 1/3 of the European market. And the reason behind were simply super competitive prices, which were then later identified to be subject to dumping processes. At the end, the European Commission thoroughly investigated and then called for tariffs, first temporarily in the mid of last year. And you saw the effect, or you see the effect here. We are immediately losing some market share by decreasing the imports. At the end, we believe that the local supply is strengthened by these measurements, and you also have to consider that you have 6 local producers of titanium dioxide in Europe already. Taking all the other Western country producers, you end up with much higher number. So in the end, there is enough material to service the European needs, but we will for sure continue to see imports from China. So we believe they will level and balance down to a market share of about 15%. That is just our expectation. But we all have to see how that goes. At the end, no one of us has been here before at that particular point in titanium dioxide history. Let's see how that actually develops. But we are very confident that the Western suppliers can manage your demand and also are ready to face a growth when it comes. That's actually a little bit of a concerning picture here, but you may call it the elephant in the room. What is the big problem is actually that China obviously has overbuilt the capacity 3 times. So basically they are very much oversupplied, and that dooms them to basically export the material. Now very recently the mature markets, the Western markets, are calling for protection. So it's not just the US, it's not just Europe. We also see the same trend towards Brazil. We also see it now in India, and actually expect to hear an announcement very soon. Again, that is nothing that concerns us here in Europe, because at the end there is enough production capacity installed to meet your demands, and definitely a reduction in Western capacity is something which should be avoided, because at the end this all keeps up competition. And that is, I think, a guarantee for a very efficient production, a very balanced cost situation, and that is something we are following, we are actually focusing on. So that was my presentation on titanium dioxide and the dynamics.
Thank you very much.